So Fulton County Arts and Culture was established in 1979. Since then, we have provided or invested in.
Chantress, I think your audio went out.
Hear me?
I
Yeah.
can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. And our mission is to support arts organizations and individual artists and community organizations that provide artistic services to the community. And overall, we're trying to provide access to the arts to all Fulton County residents. So we do that through the Contracts for Services Program funding division. We support individual artists, municipalities, colleges, universities, nonprofits, cultural institutions, arts organizations, and schools, and neighborhood organizations. So as an organization, in terms of eligibility, we require organizations to have not only their incorporation status with the state of Georgia being active and compliant, but also you must have a 501c3 that is established as well. We are supporting Fulton County-based organizations. So meaning your headquarters, your office, your studio, your presenting venue must be based in Fulton County. And we check that information and make sure that it aligns with what is registered on the Secretary of State's website. And also by verifying your physical street address. So you'll see in the application that we do ask you for both your mailing address and your street address. That street address is very important because it helps us to further identify where you're actually based and which district your organization is in. As an individual artist, we are looking at the same requirement in terms of being based in Fulton County, not just your studio, but your actual residential address. Individual artists are eligible to apply actually this year in the individual artist category. We have separated individual artists out of the small arts project category so that we are being fairly fair in our review process for individual artists, comparing artists to artists versus artists to organizations. So individual artists, we do require that you provide in your application your full, we do ask you for your studio address, but we actually need your residential address. And we will ask you for verifying documents that I'll talk about a little bit later to support your where you reside. In addition to nonprofit entities being eligible, colleges and universities that are based in Fulton County are eligible to apply. So for example, we support the Rialto Theater. We have supported GSU Gallery. We have supported Spelman College Art Museum. But those programs that are being presented in the application for the colleges and universities must meet the requirement of providing access to the general public. So although we will allow those projects to entertain the student body, the faculty, they must reach an outside audience of 50% as a part of their marketing plan and outreach plan to the community. Okay. In addition to colleges and universities, local school systems, so for example, Fulton County schools or an individual school, is eligible to apply. We also support independent schools with their applications as well. Next on the list are organizations that are considered regional or have a statewide focus. Sometimes we have organizations that have chapters in other jurisdictions, other states, other counties. As long as the regional office or local office that is applying for the application for Fulton County is based in Fulton County, and you have the documentation to support that, you are eligible to apply for funding. Again, your projects must be open to the general public and serve Fulton County residents. So it must go beyond your membership audience. Additionally, we support the 15 municipalities in Fulton County. So any of the cultural divisions, economic divisions, all the divisions of government within a city are eligible to apply as long as they're based in Fulton County. So what's ineligible? What's considered ineligible? So for organizations, if you are a private for-profit organization, you are not eligible to apply for funding. Of course, organizations that are based outside of Fulton County are not eligible to apply for funding. If you are a returning applicant and you did not complete your contractual requirements in the last several years, you would be considered in default status and would not be eligible to apply for funding until those contractual requirements were met. Nonprofit organizations having issues with their 501c3 status at the time of application, we ask you for your documentation with the application. We also do a little follow-up ourselves to check whether you are compliant, both on the Secretary of State side and also with the IRS side. Religious institutions and organizations are also considered ineligible as entities. And Fulton County government departments or agencies are not eligible to apply for funding. For individual artists, we know that many of you are incorporated and you have an LLC. For the purpose of this grant, you would apply using your individual status and not your LLC. So you would apply as an individual artist, but this will not be based upon your company. Individual artists that are also in default with their contractual compliance requirements would be ineligible to apply. Faith-based artists and tattoo artists. So before I move on from this section, I always get the question later on, you know, what kinds of disciplines do we actually support and what types of projects do we support? We support your traditional fine arts programming. So that would be dance, music, theater. We support literary arts. We support film, television, radio, so anything in media. We also support fiber designs, applied design programming, I'm blanking for the moment, storytelling, presentations. So we do have a wide range of disciplines that we actually support. And if I didn't name the discipline that you're thinking about presenting, you can ask me about that later. And in terms of projects, your projects can be, you know, your typical event as a performance or a series of performances, like a concert series, summer camps, classes, lectures, artist talks, productions, exhibitions. Those are the kinds of things that we have typically supported in the past. So multi-year funding is a status or a designation that is typically only open to applicants that are eligible to apply for general operating funds. Those applicants happen to be mission-based traditional arts organizations. When we have the funding to make those designations for those artists and organizations, we pick the top scoring applicants for each review category, and that designation lasts for an additional 2 years. So it simply means if we do have the funding to provide that designation for FY22, that applicant would receive the same amount of funding for the next 2 years, and would have an application that is an amended or abbreviated version that would be due in FY23 and FY24. So a few updates for next year. So legacy partners receiving operating support from Fulton County are no longer eligible to apply for funding through the CFS program. Priority support will be given to applicants based in districts 1, 2, and 6, meaning your administrative base or office, and your headquarters are based in those districts. This is really simply referring to our desire to encourage arts organizations and individual artists in those districts to apply. We typically have the bulk of our organizations submitting applications for the last 40 years based in districts 4 and parts of district 5. So we're just really trying to spread our wings and help to support the ecosystems for the arts in our what we call under-resourced districts 1, 2, and 6. Applicants applying with the fiscal agent must maintain their relationship with that fiscal agent throughout the application process, the contracting process, and the actual grant period. Applicants losing their fiscal agent relationship and connection will actually forfeit their award going through this process. So we are requiring the applicants that are submitting applications with the fiscal agent to actually submit a letter of agreement between the fiscal agent and the sponsored program as a part of the application process. We want to make sure that that relationship stays intact throughout the entire contracting period. And if you decide somewhere along this process that you no longer wish to have your application reviewed, or you don't want to follow through with the process, we ask that you submit that in writing to the Contracts for Services team, and our information is included at the end of these slides, so you can get in touch with us. So the funding categories. For general operating support, this is open to mission-based arts organizations with a 501c3 status that is 4 years or older. So meaning you were established for more than 4 years. In this category, Applicants can ask for up to $50,000, providing their budget is $100,000 or more. Applicants with budgets under that $100,000 mark can ask for up to $20,000. In this category, we also have an additional stipulation for that request amount. The request amount cannot exceed 20% of your previous year's expenses. So it's a three-part request requirement. You can ask for $50K if your budget is larger than $100,000. You can ask for a maximum of $20K if your budget falls underneath that number, underneath $100,000. And then your request amount can exceed 20% of your previous year's expenses. Additionally, there is a cash match requirement for the operating support funds category, meaning that if you asked us for $50,000, you must have identified support or a matching support of either $50,000, so it's 1-to-1, or half cash, half in kind. It is really much easier if you consider your matching support to be the rest of your budget minus what you're requesting from Fulton County. In this category, what we are supporting in terms of operating support funds is an organization's entire season. So we can cover administrative expenses, venue expenses, artistic support, but we're also expecting public programs and events to be provided to the citizens of Fulton County, and for that to be defined in your application. So moving on to project support funds. Project support funds is open to non-arts organizations, first-time applicants with a 501c3 that is established for 3 years or more. So if you're a first-timer to Fulton County, but you have a long history as an organization, you would apply in the project support funds category. Also in this category, we support colleges and universities, local schools, independent schools, civic organizations, and neighborhood organizations. In this category, when we define project support, we are typically looking at, a single unifying factor for your project. So it could be your education programs. It could be your summer camp program. It could be a concert series. It could be one exhibition or one workshop. We're simply looking for a unified project or event to be presented as your project for this category. In this category, you can request, again, up to $50,000 if your budget is $100,000 or more. Those with smaller budgets can request up to $20,000. The final caveat for your request amount in this category is you cannot exceed 50% of the total project expense. So if you have a $100,000 project, you're already capped at a $50,000 request, but then you have to look at your budget size to figure out what your final request amount can be in this category. Additionally, we ask for candidates in this category to provide a 1-to-1 match. So moving on to the emerging arts funds category, this is really a category that's developed for emerging and new arts organizations. This is only for arts organizations. Your emerging status is determined by the date your 501c3 was established. So 3 years or less, you would apply in this category. Additionally, your budget would be $100,000 or less. You would be eligible to apply for project support, and that project support could cover your traditional artistic programming, but it also could cover what we call organizational capacity support, meaning if you were seeking your 501c3, you could apply with a fiscal agent in this category and use the funding to secure your 501c3. Additionally, you would also have to have a public presentation as a part of your proposal for this application. Applicants in this category for the first time can request a maximum of $5,000. In years 2 and 3 of this designation, you can request $10,000. Once you have your fully established 501c3 and you've been in this category for 2 or 3 years, then you can move into any of the other categories that fit your organization. So operating support, projects, support funds, and art services, if that is something that fits what you do. The Art Services Funds category was designated to provide support, both project and general operating, for those organizations that do business-to-business service, meaning they're providing services for arts organizations or individual artists. And we are thinking of services such as masterclass workshops, residencies, legal advice, financial planning, marketing assistance, board development. So these are organizations that are here to provide support for the arts community. We do allow arts organizations or organizations that are providing a specific service, maybe it's for an individual artist, to apply for project support. So if you are providing a residency for individual artists, you could apply in the Arts Services Funds category. In this category, applicants can ask for $50,000 if their budget is $100,000 or more, $20,000 if their budget falls beneath that requirement. If you're asking for project support, again, your request amount is capped at 50% of the expenses. If you're asking for general operating support in this category, then your request is capped at 20% of your previous year's expenses. In the Small Arts Project Funds category, all applicants are eligible to apply in this category. What differentiates this category from the others, this is really for one-time events. The cap on the request amount is $5,000. So these would be one-time community-based events that you can apply for in this category. So individual artists have their own category. Again, you are eligible to apply for up to $5,000. There is no cash match required for this category. You can ask for funding to support a one-time event. So even if you are producing a film, a documentary film, or creating this theatrical production, you have to make sure that you're able to complete your project within the calendar year. If that is not something that you're able to do, you must be able to present something that is an actual public-facing event for your application proposal. If you are doing a public art piece for this particular category, we know that city permits are not possible before the application is submitted. But what we do ask is that you submit a partnership letter from the city or from the business that you're working with as a part of your application process. And then we're going to require for all of those documents as you secure them, if you're awarded funding, to be submitted with your application. For municipalities, this is the last category. Municipalities can ask for project support. They can ask for any kind of program that's being presented that supports the community, invites the community in, and can be anything from residencies, theatrical performances, dance, music, arts festivals, community partnerships, public art projects, podcasts, film work, camps, classes. It can run the gamut. In this category, cities can ask for up to $50,000. And we do require a one-to-one cash match as well. Project requests cannot exceed 50% of the total expense for the project. So if you are a first-time applicant and you are here with us today, you have met the first requirement, which is to attend this webinar so you can get a feel for what is being required in the application process, and it will make your application that much stronger. We also encourage you, if you're a first-time applicant, to submit a letter of interest. I believe you have until the end of December to submit your letter of interest, and that is your opportunity to get some one-on-one feedback from me about your eligibility, about your project. It's a good way to get some face time with us as staff to help you through the application process. The closer we get to the deadline, we will not be able to work with you as much on that. It does get a little bit hectic for us. So I advise you to take advantage of the letter of interest. We also ask first-time applicants to make sure you have proof of your residency, if you're an individual artist, and for organizations, just to make sure that when you are establishing your profile, setting up your applications, make sure that you are completely filling out the application, and we have both your street address and your mailing address, and we verify your headquarters and your office based upon your street address. We also encourage you as first-time applicants to go ahead and enter into the vendor code registration process. Tasha's going to talk to you about that a little later, but it is the code that we use to make the payment process happen. It's very important. Sometimes things can get lost in the mix, and we are going through an upgrade this year. So you really want to make sure that you take care of that and you have it verified before we get to the award phase later in FY22. So what do we consider ineligible programs or ineligible expenses? So non-arts and cultural activities, projects that do not incorporate, a clear plan for COVID safety guidelines for those in-person programs. So this year, in-person and virtual programs are perfectly acceptable. Also ineligible are religious-based projects, culinary programs, non-art focused college and university programs, and for the organizations that are not mission-based arts organizations, you must have a qualified arts organization or individual artist leading your projects. So we want to see that as a part of your application narrative. We want to see that in the resumes that you are required to submit. You must have some artistic skills that are supporting the programming that you're presenting. So if that is not evident in the application, then your application is not eligible. Also, ineligible expenses include artistic fees for full-time Fulton County employees, activities that are restricted to an organization's membership. We do not support capital expenses, endowment funds, deficit reduction, entertainment costs. We do not support activities outside of Fulton County. Overhead costs for non-arts organizations. So you're already limited to project support only as a non-arts organization. We don't support fundraising activities or volunteer appreciation programs. All right, we're gonna let Tasha step up to the mic and talk to you about the vendor code process.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for all of your questions. Once again, we'll be answering those at the end. So I'm gonna briefly talk to you about the vendor code process. As Shantra said, this year we're undergoing a major upgrade in our system. So some of these processes may change, but we won't know for certain until the first of the year once all of the upgrades have been completed and all the new policy is in place. But for now, here's what the vendor code looks like currently. So, and I'll send you a follow-up email with this presentation that'll have all the links. You don't have to worry about writing any links down right now. So can you go up a little bit further, Shantris? Oh, down a little bit, come back down a little bit. Okay, perfect. Okay, so when you log onto our vendor code system, first I should explain what a vendor code number is. A vendor code number is sort of like your personal social security number for the Fulton County system. So if you're going to receive money from Fulton County, you need an active vendor code number. And your vendor code number usually starts with like a VS, and it'll have like a bunch of zeros, and then it'll have like 4 or 5 digits at the end. So that's your whole entire vendor code. And if you're planning on applying to Fulton County this year, it's probably either a good idea to start your vendor code process either now or at the top of the year, because it is a 3-day process, so to speak. So I'll just tell you about the first introduction to it and kind of how you will maneuver in the system. So when you log onto the Fulton County Vendor Code self-service system, this is the first page you will see. If you follow the blue arrow, there's a form W-9. You want to open that up on your desktop, save it, because you're going to need to fill that out in order to get your vendor code activated. So that's a very important form. We already have that there for you. So just open it up, save it to your desktop. It's there for you when you need it. Then if you will follow the pink arrow, it goes to the registration process. And if you already have your vendor code, if you've been with Fulton County for a while, and you have your user ID and password, I implore you to go ahead and log in and make sure all of your information is updated. Make sure your address is current and precise. Make sure all of the contact information is up to date. If you've moved in the past few months, definitely, put your new address in so that it makes the payment process towards the end of our fiscal year a lot more smoother. So if you don't have a Fulton County vendor code, or you're not sure if you have a vendor code, you want to click the registration button right there that the pink arrow is pointing to, and that'll bring you to this next page. That's really important. And this is where you'll search for an existing account. This is your first step. So maybe you or your organization has done business with Fulton County years ago. You already have a vendor code. So this is the page that you'll put in your information to make sure that you do have one or you don't. So the top part where the orange button is, the orange arrow is pointing to, is for companies. So you'll put in your name, your company name, or I believe it's your EIN number. And you'll click search, and it'll tell you whether you have a vendor code or not. And for individuals, where the green arrow is pointing, you want to put in your last name and the last 4 digits of your social security number, and that'll let you know if you have a vendor code or not. And I feel like this is the perfect place to talk about the difference between organizations, individuals, which is also the difference between your EIN and your social security number. So if you're an organization, and this system as it stands currently is mostly built for companies, corporations, organizations. So it'll ask you for an EIN number or your employer identification number. So if you're an organization, you put that in, that's what you'll use as your identifier for the system. If you are an individual, please use your social security number because you don't have an EIN, you're not a business. So putting your social security number, that and all that information is private. We don't, Chantress and I don't see any of that. It goes through purchasing, so we don't see any of that information. So you want to use that in order to connect you with your payments. And yeah, so then you'll go to the next page, please, Chantress. Now, if you don't have, if you've gone through that, you've searched, you know that you don't have a vendor code at all in the Fulton County system, then you want to start the process of applying for your vendor code. So first step is, of course, your general information. You want to create a password. Please put your username and password somewhere safe, because anytime if there's an issue or with like your address, or you need to change your address, you need to update some information. If you're an organization and you get a new executive director, then you're going to need to use that information to update it in our system. Our accounts payable department is a stickler for making sure that the addresses and information in our system reflects what's on the invoices. And if they're off, they will not pay your invoice. There'll be a holdup in your payment. So even down to the point where, for instance, I live in the city of East Point, and I can, on my address, I can put either East Point or Atlanta, Georgia. Mail will get to me either way. But if, let's say, I put in the vendor code system that I live in the city of East Point, and on my invoice, I'll say the city of Atlanta, then they'll kick that information back and they'll say, well, these addresses don't match. So I'll have to either, change it in the system, that's a little bit of work to try to change your address in the system, or I need to change it on my invoice. So make sure that it is the exact same way. If you want it to be East Point or whatever, put East Point. If you want it to be Atlanta, just make sure you're consistent with what's in the system and what is on your invoice, so that when it comes down to payment, they won't kick it back to us, and it'll be, it'll have to go back into the queue of accounts payable, and it'll just draw out the payment process just that much longer. And while I'm talking about payments, please know that we are a government organization, so the payment process takes some time. So once you receive your notification and say, hey, congratulations, you were awarded a grant from Fulton County, you're not going to get a check that next week. There's going to be a process. We have to go through contracting and then the payment process, and once you get all the invoices, we send them to accounts payable and they do their own processing. So it's going to take some time. So just know that. So after you've filled out all of your username and information, the system will ask you a series of questions about your organization or yourself. Just put all the information in. If you're an organization, you're going to want to keep your business certification or your 501c3 certification handy, because you're going to need to send that to our vendor code administrators to activate your account. And what I mean by activation. So once you have applied for your vendor code, you have your vendor code number, you're not done yet. Once you've done that, you're going to want to send an email to, go down to the next slide, please. You're going to want to send an email to Jabron Harris and also Richard Franklin, who is our other vendor code coordinator. You're going to send them a copy of that W-9 that I told you to save onto your desktop. You're going to fill that out with your information, make sure what's on the W-9 matches what you put in your system. And you're going to email it to Jabron or Franklin or Richard Franklin to say, hey, I just registered for my vendor code. Here's my W-9. I have included in this email my 501c3 certification or any other information that they'll need. You'll see that on the website, and you'll email it to them and say, hey, can you please activate my vendor code? Your vendor code is not done until it's activated, so you want to make sure that you take that final step. A lot of people think that just registering for the vendor code itself, you have a number, you're done. Nope, you want to make sure it's activated. So you want to email Jabron, email Richard to let them know that you are a recent applicant and can they please activate your vendor code number. If you have any other questions about vendor codes, definitely put them in the chat. I'll answer them for you as far as I can right now. Like I said, we are undergoing a system-wide upgrade that will not be complete. Hopefully it'll be complete by the first of the year. They've been working hard and diligently on it almost all year. So we hope that all the updates are done and complete by the time we get back to work in January. And if there are any changes, I'll put it out in the email and say, hey, here are the changes. Or you can just give me a call if you see that there's something on the website that you don't understand, and I can try to help answer those questions for you. I believe that is my section of the webinar. I'm going to hand it back over to our illustrious leader here. Chantress, back to you.
Thank you, Tasha. Now we're going to talk about fiscal agents. So if you are visiting with us today on this webinar, and you're thinking about applying with the fiscal agent, or if you or an organization thinking about being a fiscal agent, I hope that this information helps you with what we require in this process and what fiscal agents and the sponsored organizations are responsible for. So typically, a group or an organization would use a fiscal agent because maybe they are incorporated, but their 501c3 process is not complete. Or B, they are an organization that has been doing business for a long time as a group. We have worked with some collectives before, artist collectives, and they have just decided that they did not want to have a 501c3, but they want to do programming for the community. So you then can be, as that group, apply with the fiscal agent, because the fiscal agent will have the status that is eligible to apply for funding with Fulton County. We do suggest when if you're the sponsored organization, if you are looking for a fiscal agent, that you look for someone or speak with someone who you already have a connection with. B, it is also works best in your favor too if it is an organization that we have, of course, have funded before. So if you're looking for a fiscal agent, you can give us a call and we could tell you a few of the organizations that do or have in the past provided that service. But that relationship really does need to be strong because the fiscal agent is responsible for meeting all of the compliance requirements for the application. So meaning the agent has to be based in Fulton County, 501c3 status intact, incorporation status is active and compliant. Their budget documents that are required, and of course based in Fulton County, and we do verify that. The fiscal agent will be responsible for actually establishing the application in the web grant system. And web grants is the system that we use for our application process. So everything has to be submitted online through web grants. So they would establish the profile, start the application, and add the names of the leading members of the sponsored organization as a part of the application so that they can actually do the content and the narrative part of the application. So you would both share responsibility for what is required in terms of compliance, the required midterm project report, progress report, and then the final report that's due, the contracts, the invoices. So you're both responsible for all of those pieces that go along with this process. So that relationship, a good relationship, is very, very important. If you are an organization that has presented as a fiscal agent before, please note that you are also eligible to apply for funding, and you can support up to 2 sponsored groups per funding cycle. And additionally, just wanted to tell you a little bit about what other things the fiscal agent would be legally obligated to do. So we talked about registering or establishing a profile on web grants. The fiscal agent also needs to maintain records of disbursement related to the grant. So the actual check for funding, or when we get that EFT process in place, would go to the fiscal agent, and the fiscal agent is responsible for then sending the funding to the sponsored organization. So the fiscal agent is going to be submitting the invoices and signing the contracts as well. And as a fiscal agent, although you're not required to complete the final report and the progress report, you are going to be required to make sure that the sponsored applicant or sponsored organization meets the guidelines and the deadlines for those documents, and that they actually are submitted to us so that it does not hurt your ability to apply for funding in the future. Now, you may be wondering how the application is reviewed and assessed. There's a really more detailed, clearly outlined version of the general funding criteria in your guidelines. Please take a look at that. And we also have added the particular criteria points that apply to the questions at the top of the form in web grants. So artistic quality is very important. We are an arts organization within a government institution providing support for the arts. So artistic quality is at the top of the list. and receives the most points when the panel is reviewing your application. And by artistic quality, we are looking at the organization, your history of presenting and producing, the artist, your history of presenting and producing, your qualification, any accolades or awards that you received, the quality of the work that you produce. For individual artists, we're looking for at least 5 years of presenting and producing experience. So all of that must be identified in your application. And then for community impact, this talks about all of that community engagement work that you should be doing as a part of the work that you're presenting to Fulton County residents. So how you engage the community, what kind of outreach you're doing, in terms of marketing, how you reach those audiences, and what's your goal for the work that you're doing, or the services you're providing to the community. So community impact is paramount as well, because this program is about providing access to cultural resources to the community. We also evaluate organizational planning and the individual artist planning. So do you have a good program design? Is there an organized delivery method? Does it make sense? We also assess leadership capability for individual artists. So your experience leading, guiding projects in the past, and managerial capability. So looking at the entire organization, everything from who's in your leadership role, supporting staff, the role that the board plays for your organization, and your volunteer support for the things that you're doing with the community. We also are very, very concerned about providing access, making sure that programs are not only accessible in terms of a physical venue, but how are you reaching out to those underserved communities, those different geographic areas that are culturally under-resourced that we talked about earlier? Are you providing discount tickets? If you are doing something with, for example, the visual impaired, is there a community partnership or relationship that you have that allows you to connect to that audience so that they know that your programs are available to them? And finally, we also evaluate fiscal responsibility. So budgets that are clear, concise, numbers that from page to page are, they make sense, they're the same. Did you submit your budget? Your budget breakdown is requested, especially for any items that are beyond $2,500, a clear breakdown of what those numbers represent. And also, did you follow the requests guidance criteria that's also in the guidelines, clearly explained? If you had a deficit, is there a good explanation in the application about how you would cure that? And just really good narratives and notes within the application about how you're managing your budgets and your fiscal responsibility. Fiscal responsibility is currently being evaluated under managerial leadership and leadership capability. So how does this process work? So when you send in your applications way before January 30th, staff will review the application to make sure that it is compliant, meeting all the requirements, you're applying in the right category, that you're eligible, that we have all those documents that we requested to support your eligibility, that you've actually submitted eligible projects. Once we determine that, we then package up your applications and we send them out to a group of peer reviewers, community panel reviewers. These reviewers are sometimes artists, administrators, arts administrators, board members, general people in the community. They can come from Fulton County, not necessarily have to come from Fulton County, but we ask these people to assess your applications, score your applications, and they're also assigned first reader assignments, so they will be calling particular applicants to talk about the application prior to their final assessment. We take all of the notes from the peer review process and the scores, and then we send that on to step number 3, which is the allocations committee. The allocations committee is comprised of Arts Council members, members of the arts community, the funding community, and staff, and they determine, based upon your score and ranking, and the notes that we receive from panel, and your historical funding, if you are returning, how much money you will actually be awarded. Following the allocation committee review, the Arts Council reviews to make sure that we are servicing the entire Fulton County community from north to south, that we got a good representation of applicants, and that we are striving to fulfill our quest to serve all Fulton County audiences. And then after the Arts Council review, the applications are then delivered to the Board of Commissioners, which would probably happen late May, early June, for the final approval process. And by that time, we will be discussing with you whether or not you received an award or you did not receive an award. Please note that we do provide notes to those applicants who are not selected to move on to the allocation component of the application process, or those applicants that don't make it through the compliance review. You will also receive notification from staff as well about what's missing. But it is June that you would actually find out about your funding. Okay. So, getting started. If you haven't started, establish that profile on Web Grants. If you're a new applicant, send us a letter of interest so that we can guide you through the process right now in early stages. Go ahead and start working on your vendor code process. Make sure that you're based in Fulton County. Inside of Web Grants for each one of the funding categories, make sure that you access the general description area. And then there's an attachment section, which has a lot of great extra documents to help you with what kinds of documentation is required for your application and for your individual category. What we require in terms of artistic support material. It's just got a lot of really great details. So make sure you access that area before you actually dive into your application. Print those documents out. There's also a copy of the guidelines attached there as well, should you need that. And then we just say, go ahead and get the application started and apply. I encourage you to submit your applications early during the week of the deadline, because never seems to fail us that every time, every due date, the system gets overwhelmed with the amount of traffic and will shut down on us. And if you wait too close to 11:59, you might not be able to get through and submit your application as well. So your applications are due 11:59 p.m. on January 30th, 2022, but get it into us early. So a few quick tips. Have a second set of eyes to look at your applications to make sure that the numbers are flowing appropriately. Also, to make sure that if you are copying and pasting information from other grants that you have submitted, that you're using the appropriate paste function within web grants, and that you're pasting only the content and not picking up some of the computer jargon. And so you want to make sure that your applications read well, that the narratives are clear. You also want to make sure you're addressing our areas of interest in your application. You also want to make sure that you have good details about the audiences that you are supporting or providing your services to, and how you will reach those audiences, and how you will evaluate the work that you're providing through your projects. Again, clear and concise answers. There are character limits within web grants for each one of the questions and passages. Make sure you're following that. You will get an error signal if you're not following that. A lot of those pages will not allow you to move on until you have an answer in all of your text boxes. So I would encourage you to, print the list of questions. Again, those list of questions is in that handy dandy area of the funding application where you get the application. Or you can simply print out the application so you can work on a Word document, get your answers together, and then copy and paste, because you will need to be able to completely fill a page before you can save it. And then just be patient. This is a rather lengthy process. Once we get the applications for you, we have a lot of work to do in terms of getting them ready for panel. We project panel having your applications in March. And next part of the review phase, moving from panel, would be the allocations committee and arts council, so that we can get things prepared to go to the Board of Commissioners in June. That is why most of those categories have cash match requirement. So you have to think about your cash flow during this process. I know many of you will be starting your projects probably at the top of January. A lot of the organizations will be doing that. So you have to make sure that you have a diverse funding source identified in your application. That's part of that fiscal responsibility that we are looking for. And you also need to make sure that you have thought through your cash flow, because you would not be receiving even notification until June, and the award would come much later if you are awarded funding. So now Tasha's going to let me know what our questions are.
All right, Chantress, we have a ton of great questions. So
Okay.
I'm going to scroll back up to the top of the chat and give you our first question. Okay, the first question is, I'm representing an organization that has a fiscal sponsor. Can that qualify? I know we answered that.
Okay. Yeah.
I answered in the chat how to find out if you're in districts 1, 2, or 6. And in my follow-up email, I'll include the link to the Fulton County website where you can put in your address and it'll tell you what what Fulton County district you're in. Okay, I know that PO boxes alone are not valid because there is no street address. However, if we are a non-brick and mortar organization, is it possible to use the PO box street in front of the normal PO box address? we checked and we can receive mail this way. We heard from a nonprofit leader that they do that to qualify for a street address for their organization in their county. So I guess if you have a PO box and let's say it's on Peachtree Street, can you use that address, like the 1515 Peachtree Street, just pulling numbers, to qualify?
So we do have to have no physical address. So either, and remember, we're verifying your where you're based and your eligibility as an organization based upon your Secretary of State paperwork. So we would be looking at, what did you include as a physical address for your organization in that directory? Then next in line, if you listed a PO box and not a physical street address, then we would be looking at the registered agent. Is that registered agent based in Fulton County? Is there a lead person in the organization that has an address in Fulton County? That could be considered as your administrative office, but it would need to be a person that's listed on the Secretary of State website, because I think there are 3 individuals listed per company on the Secretary of State website, which are paperwork.
All right, the next question is, how do you define in-kind regarding services offered by staff? So I'm going to guess it's how are we defining in-kind contributions? I'm not sure regarding services offered by staff, or maybe if staff offers in-kind. Oh, maybe it's if you have volunteers that volunteer for your organization and they're kind of considered quote unquote staff, or how are we classifying them as in-kind or their work as in-kind? I hope I'm clear working with that question appropriately.
If the staff person is providing some professional service support as volunteer work, so for example, graphic design, and what would you be paying a graphic designer? So that right now, that's like the first thing that comes to my mind. What would you be paying the graphic designer for that role if you were actually contracting that work out? So if that is what that question reflects, then that's how you would answer that question. Otherwise, I need to speak a little bit more with that person to see if I can understand it.
Yes, and I'll encourage you to the person who asked that question to email us some clarification so that we can better answer your question for you. In the meantime, we'll move on to the next question, which is, can you use matching funds from other grants? And I'm assuming that's for the cash match portion.
That is definitely, that's what matching funds are. So it would be other grants, foundation support, state, city, federal support, your own cash. Remember, I said that a simple way to think about cash match, you have $100,000 budget and you're asking for 20 from Fulton County. The rest of your budget, you're raising it somehow. So the rest of your budget expenses can be the cash match.
All right, next question. If our organization has made a commitment to annually showcase public art, a la outdoor sculptures for rent, can we apply for infrastructure support like lighting, signage, and pediments?
Lighting is considered capital expenses, so that is not allowed. But if your pediments are, for example, plexiglass stands, boxes, wooden stands that you're sitting your sculpture on is not permanently affixed to the building, that is considered a supply.
Okay, I thought they were capital expenses, so I'm glad we asked that to clarify.
Mm-hmm.
Can we apply in more than one category in operating and in project?
You can only apply for one category and submit one application per funding cycle.
If I partner with another artist and I'm a resident of Fulton County, but my partner is not, would we be able to apply?
As long as, yes, we just need the person that's based in Fulton County to apply.
Is the fiscal agent required to be located or headquartered in Fulton County if the sponsor organization can prove its activities are headquartered / serving / have venues in Fulton County?
The fiscal agent has to be based in Fulton County.
If I'm an artist who lives in Fulton County and who is working on a project that is outside of Fulton County and or the state of Georgia, but my project will be shown or exhibited in Fulton County, would I be eligible to apply for funding?
So again, you could only apply for the exhibition. So then you have to have a Fulton County venue as a part of your application. And then that community engagement, how are you getting people in the door? What kind of programs you're doing besides just exhibiting? Are there artist talks? Are there community workshops, etc.? That would be very important in the application.
Okay, the next one is, what is the address for the vendor code system? I'll include that in my follow-up email. Let's see. It's also, how do you connect to the vendor code website? I'll submit that. I'll send that afterwards. Let me read this one. Okay. This is about, and it was a direct question to me, but it's actually a really good question, so I'm just gonna ask it. This person is having trouble trying to change their address in the system that's required for direct deposit. So I cannot set up direct deposit. I was told the site is about the site being upgraded, but do you know when this issue will be fixed? That's a good question. When we were informed that the system was being upgraded for security reasons, we were also told that application for direct deposit was going to be halted at that time. So if you were able to get in before that time for direct deposit, you're shoo-in, you're great. If not, I would suggest that you send me an email at the top of the year so that I can pose that question to purchasing, because I don't know when the system will be upgraded or fixed unless they, until they tell us. So if you send me an email top of the year, I can address that with purchasing and I can give you a better answer then, because I'm not sure when the upgrade will be complete. Like I said before, when I was talking about the vendor code, I hope that it's completed at the top of the year, but it's technology. These things can go anyway. So that's to address that question to me at the top of the year, and I'll be able to have a better answer for you at that time. Okay, next question. If using a fiscal agent, does the sponsoring organization still need to have a Fulton County address? We answered that, yes, it does. The fiscal agent needs to have a address in Fulton County. Does the web grant system accept PDF documents as attachment or only Microsoft Word documents? I think it does accept PDFs.
It does, yeah, accepts both.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, could you confirm that FCAC funding priority is for districts 1, 2, and 6? Yes, we are. Well, I'm not sure exactly.
That's just an encouragement. That's an encouragement to spread out and attract more artists and organizations from those districts. We've been doing some separate outreach work. So this is really about, it's not about applicants in other districts doing work in those districts. While that is really good, but we are really trying to grow the number of applicants from those districts. So if you have colleagues, friends that are not on this webinar, that have never heard of us before, please gently nudge them and encourage them to apply.
Yeah. Tell them to send us an email. We'll, gladly talk with them about it. And we do have another upcoming webinar in January, but it's probably best that they send us an email now so that we can kind of get them started so that they're not late in the game. We want them to apply. This is not a question, but a comment. Thought it was really good. I wanted to send a word of thanks. Adding the non-binary category to demographics is so important to the community we serve in Atlanta Freedom Bands. They really appreciated this change to bring visibility to their community. Yay, thanks. I'm glad that we include that as well. So important. Let's see. Oh, does the one-to-one cash match have to be cash in hand today or on January 30th?
No, it is not that kind of requirement. You can, at the point of application, where will you be? So you can, typically people will include an asterisk on things that are either outstanding, to be determined, dateline, the deadlines for that award might come later in the year as well. So we're not expecting you to have like cash in hand like right now. There are 2 or 3 other steps where we'll ask you, where are you now? What do you know now? Especially when you receive the award, it's going to be an opportunity for you to update your budgets and tell us what you have confirmed at that point. Then you have progress report time. It's another opportunity. I hope that's helpful.
All right, the next question is, I'm a nonprofit leader and a curator. Can the organization I work for apply and I apply? So can their organization apply and then they apply as an individual artist for the same funding cycle?
As long as you are not applying for the same thing. So whatever your organization is applying for has to be a separate total, nothing to do with your project.
Let's see, will awards be made to organizations outside of the 3 target organizations? Yes.
Yes.
We do award awards in all of the districts. We just want more people in districts 1, 2, and 6 to apply, just to get the more arts representation out there to those districts. Let's see, is that the last question? That seems to be the last question. I'll call again. Once again, if anybody has any questions while we're here, please type them in the chat so that we can answer them while we're all here together in this space. If not, our email addresses are in the presentation, so you can always send them to us that way. Going once, going twice. All right, that seems to be it. Oh, wait, oh, nope. The organization is in District 6. Oh, wait, no, that's not a complete. The organization, I guess the applying organization is in District 6, but the project they're applying with will most likely be in a different organization. So, yeah, that's, I guess. Okay, it's not really a complete question, but I'll try my best. So it seems like the organization that this is going to be applying is in District 6, but the projects that they're going to produce are not in District 6. So I'm guessing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that considered like in our special consideration for the districts, the artistically underserved districts? If it's in that district, but the project itself, the organization is located in that district, but the project is in other districts.
Yes, that is acceptable. And if you're new to our funding arena, then I am so happy to have you here, and that we have one more organization or individual artists applying for funding from District 6.
Yes. Verify the deadline for the letter of interest.
So I'm looking at the guidelines, and the deadline is January 7th.
All right, is that anyone else have any questions before we adjourn the meeting for today? And chances, we also got a lot of thank yous, and the webinar was very informative, so I just want to pass that information on to you.
Beautiful. Thank you all. Tasha's going to send you the notes, and this session has been recorded, and she will probably share that with you as well.
Yes, and I stated